Have you ever tried to paint cloth, but the more you blend, the more horrified you are with the end result? That used to be me. Today I'm going to teach you the results of all of my suffering. So now I present the ultimate guide for painting cloth. This method will work in pretty much any digital painting program, but today I'm using Clip Studio Paint. The end product we're aiming for will look something like this. First off, let's make a rough sketch. If you're not comfortable with drawing yet, it's okay to trace. Painting and drawing are two different skills. This is a painting exercise, so I give you permission to trace and work on your drawing skills another day. Next, I'm going to try to identify big groups of color. If you don't really know what things like highlights and occlusive shadows are, I'll link to another video on the top right. Getting the dark and light relationships correct is very important for making the cloth look 3D. So I fill a layer with black and I set the layer blending mode to color. A lot of the time, when the colors I've picked don't look right or aren't sitting together well, it's usually because its darkness and lightness values are wrong. So toggling my image to grayscale lets me quickly check if my colors are working. I'll link to another video on the top right that helps explain what values you should be aiming for. Also, for this reference image, it looks like the colors get bluer when they receive more light and more reddish orange when they get dark. So I'll keep that in mind when I'm picking my own palette of colors. After studying the colors of the photograph, I pick my own palette. I double check how accurate my values are by turning the grayscale layer back on and comparing my palette with the photograph's palette. Again, a lot of the time, when my painting looks muddy and wrong, it's because it looks wrong, even in grayscale. Conversely, when the grayscale values are working, you can probably just pick whatever colors you vibe with, and it'll look good. Before we get started painting the real thing, let's think of some simpler examples. Cloth folds are generally quite soft and round, so I tend to paint them as tubes of different sizes. I use a basic round brush here to lay in some base colors, then I shadow the colors using a soft airbrush. I have a shortcut that lets me quickly change the size of my brush. Because, for the round cylindrical forms, we want a big soft brush. Then as we reach the creases on the side of the cylinder, we actually want a really tight color change. So I'll use a really small airbrush there to create a distinct edge. The next example is to demonstrate some variety of shapes. You want to avoid repeating the same tube over and over again, as that looks really unnatural. So it's the same thing here. I use a big airbrush to shade on both sides of the large cylinder, then I use a small airbrush to create the sharper edge for the abrupt crease. And here I'm laying in some base colors just to create some basic landmarks. I'll end up blending over most of this by the end. Okay, so if you're anything like me, at this point you might be starting to feel overwhelmed. At this point in the painting, I had to work against a lot of negative self-talk that made me want to stop drawing, because the painting was still in its ugly phase, and I didn't have the confidence to believe that everything would turn out okay. If you're a beginner in anything, you have to battle this self-defeating fear all the time. And look, I can't guarantee you'll have perfect results the very first time you attempt this. You'll probably have a couple really demoralizing painting failures. But I can promise that if you work through that mental resistance that's scared of failure, that's telling you to stop, you will learn a lot, even if you don't create the perfect piece. If you're really starting to feel overwhelmed here and feel like you're losing control of the piece, I encourage you to dial back and maybe try the example pieces from earlier one more time. Then come back and try again. Alright, that's all I have to share. I'm going to sign off with a time lapse of the rest of my painting process. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them below. I'll try to take a look at them and answer them if I can. Alright, see you guys.